Hey everybody, this is Stuart. I am here with a disclaimer because I haven't disclaimed in, 2 episodes, 4 episodes, whatever. Disclaimer, here it is. If you notice, today's date is July 20th, assuming I get this out on time, not the first Monday of the month. That is because we're having a minor scheduling change with Teach Me About the Great Lakes, and that change is basically good news. We are going to continue to put out a great episode of Teach Me About the Great Lakes on the first Monday of every month. But now we're also going to try to periodically, not every month, maybe not even most months, but at least some months, also put out an episode on the third Monday of the month. And so if my math is correct, July 20th is the third Monday of the month. And so we have a really fun episode scheduled for you, and I hope you enjoy it. As always, thanks for listening, and we will see you every first Monday and some third Mondays of the month. Thanks. Bye. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Teach me about the Great Lakes. Welcome back to Teach Me About the Great Lakes, an exactly monthly podcast in which I get people who are smarter and harder working than I am to teach me all about the Great Lakes. My name is Stuart Carlton. I work with Illinois Indiana Sea Grant, and I don't know much about the Great Lakes, but I do know this. I am really, really lucky this month to be joined by Megan Gunn, one of the newest Illinois Indiana Sea Grant employees. Megan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Stuart?
I am great. We're so glad to have you aboard for numerous reasons, but the main reason, I'll be honest, is because you have a bit of diving experience, don't you?
I do have some diving experience, and it's been a journey over these last 10 years.
Well, I can't wait to dive into your journey. But the reason that's so relevant this time is because we have a couple of folks who have divin'. We have some folks on who have duveted across the Great Lakes, and my understanding is they do this thing called like a Big Five dive that I'm really curious to hear a little bit about. But before we do, let's do a little bit of theme music, and we'll go from there. Okay, our guests today are Megan Goss and Stephanie Gondula. Megan works with Michigan Sea Grant, where she's an extension educator somewhere in the Thumb region, I believe Saginaw Bay. And Stephanie, you are a marine archaeologist, is that right?
That is right.
At Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary. Now, before we even get into diving and the Big Five dive and everything like that, I want to talk about this for a minute because that is the coolest sounding thing I've ever heard, both in terms of job title and in terms of the sanctuary. So let's start with that. What is a marine archaeologist exactly?
Well, it's one of my favorite questions because a marine archaeologist goes by many names. We are also known as underwater archaeologists, maritime archaeologists, and I would say maritime might be my favorite and the most fitting because what we study is anything and all things made by humans that are connected to the water. And as we all know, living and working here in the Great Lakes, all things really are connected to the water. So what we focus on are what we call the maritime landscape. So that's lighthouses, that's historic fishing villages. Primarily, though, for me working in NOAA's Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, it's shipwrecks. We have hundreds and hundreds of shipwrecks.
Really? I had no idea. So maritime archaeologists you prefer over marine archaeologists. Let me write this down because I'll forget.
I really go all over it depends where I'm at. It depends on my mood. Because marine, as we know, marine generally refers to the ocean ecosystems. So I could be a lacustrine archaeologist as well, being in the lakes. So underwater, actually, probably now that I'm changing my mind as we're speaking here, because I said I prefer maritime. I'm switching mid-sentence. Now I like underwater because I think that's the most accessible. People know as soon as you say underwater, they can visualize, hey, that person's working underwater, studying a shipwreck, even studying a submerged, lighthouse base or something. So,
and so as an archaeologist, does like your bullwhip work underwater? Do you have to use something different?
Absolutely. I've tried that underwater. It works. And the hat is perfect underwater.
Just got to be made out of wool, so it keeps you warm. Yeah. Okay. And so Thunder Bay, where is that exactly?
Thunder Bay is nestled in the northwest corner of Lake Huron.
Okay.
So our headquarters is based in Alpena, Michigan, which is in the northern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan.
Okay.
And so we're about 4.5 hours north of Detroit, and the Marine Sanctuary is part of NOAA. So we're all colleagues here, right? Sea Grant, National Marine Sanctuary System. And there are actually 14 national marine sanctuaries across the entire U.S. We're 14, all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast, from Stellwagen Bank, Massachusetts, to the Florida Keys. There's even one south of the equator in American Samoa. But in Thunder Bay, we're really excited to be the only freshwater national marine sanctuary. But we're the only one for probably just a little bit longer, because Thunder Bay has inspired grassroots efforts for other national marine sanctuaries across the Great Lakes. So stay tuned for one pretty soon coming up in Lake Michigan.
Lake Michigan. Oh, I'm very staying tuned for that. That's very exciting. Quick update for our viewers. Our other guest, Megan Goss, is having some technical difficulties, so she's going to be jumping in a second. I don't want you to think I'm unbelievably rude and have been ignoring her. I may or may not be unbelievably rude, but I'm not ignoring her. So shipwrecks. So up there, and there's a lot of ship traffic, I guess. Are these like old shipwrecks, like pirate ship type things, or is it newer?
So the shipwrecks that we study, the shipwrecks that are in Thunder Bay, and keep in mind, there are probably anywhere from 6,000 to over 10,000 shipwrecks in all the Great Lakes.
What?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. So it's always been a very busy waterway. That's the easiest, most efficient way to transport goods, which is what humans have done since the beginning of time. They want to move things from one place to another. So you might use a birch bark canoe, a dugout canoe. And today we use huge freighters that we see work in the Great Lakes. So it's always been a natural highway. And where we are in the Great Lakes, if you look at a map of the Great Lakes, Thunder Bay and Alpena is smack dab in the middle. So just like you said, it's kind of an intersection of high traffic. So many of the shipwrecks that are in Thunder Bay are the victim of collisions. So just,
wow.
Interstate, you got two wooden schooners scooting along, one going up, one going down. It's foggy, crash, and then are at the bottom of the lake, and now are an amazing dive site.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't either. That's So I was driving, I've been to the Upper Peninsula twice, I think, once or twice. And so to the one time we drove on the bridge, the Mighty Mac, is that what it is? Big Mac?
Yeah, call it all those things at the Mackinac Bridge.
Bridge.
I wish I should have known when it was finally completed, or 1954, I think. Yeah. So that connects the Lower Peninsula to the Upper Peninsula. Okay. And you've got if you're looking north and heading north over the bridge, if you look to the right, you've got Lake Huron. If you look to the left, you've got Lake Michigan. But they're truly really one big lake. Here's
my question. I used to live in St. Pete, Florida, which has a huge bridge called the Sunshine Skyway, but this is the second Sunshine Skyway because a big boat hit it. A barge did, I don't remember when, quite some time ago, but now whenever I used to drive over the Sunshine Skyway, which is this huge, I don't know anything about bridges. It's a big suspension bridge or something. I'm like paranoid. Like I see a barge and I'm like, oh, go, 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 go. Are there any shipwrecks like right by the Mighty Mac itself?
Definitely. Now the bridge is super high. I think it's at least 150 feet above the water level. Yeah. So I don't think any vessels are going to hit it, but they do go through it and under it all the time, huge freighters. And since that was, one of the main thoroughfares for ship traffic, there's some amazing shipwrecks in the Straits of Mackinac. Right. Most of those, however, are pretty darn deep, like anywhere from 80 to 200 feet plus deep. So that's where your technical divers are going to be exploring. Okay. But what's cool about Thunder Bay is, and Megan Goss, when she joins us, can testify, is a lot of the shipwrecks, many of the shipwrecks are accessible snorkeling or paddling. You can take a kayak out and look down, and the water's so crystal clear because of the invasive mussels. You can see the shipwrecks from the surface. It's amazing.
Well, I know where my next vacation is going to be.
Good.
Yeah, that's interesting. That water clarity is making a big difference. On last episode, Teach Me About the Great Lakes, episode number 13, which you can, of course, access at teachmeaboutthegreatlakes.com/13. We spoke with Brian Roth, who is fish guy, but we talked a little bit about how clean the water is thanks to the mussels, and some might even argue too clean. But one nice benefit of that is it makes for good diving. So what is the depth at which you normally do your dive? I know nothing about diving. I've snorkeled once, twice maybe, but I've never had a self-contained underwater breathing apparatus attached to me. And so what are the depths at which you dive in the Great Lakes?
Truly anything from, well, the shallowest point to the deepest point. And you guys know these things, those points as well. The deepest point in Lake Huron is 750 feet. But you asked the deepest, where I dive. So most of my work is going to be between 8 feet and 130 feet.
Okay. And are those impressive levels to dive? I mean, of course it's impressive, but I mean, like, is that a challenge? Is the depth itself challenging at 130, or is it kind of normal for divers?
Oh, well, that's a great question. I guess so. When you decide to take the step to become a certified diver, like Megan and Megan, your first step is certified to 60 feet. And that requires training and study and dives. Not a lot, but definitely it's a commitment. And then the next level up would be, or level down, we should say, would be 130. And then you could just keep your training going to deeper and deeper depths. Of course, that requires more technical training because there's more technology involved in getting regular old humans to that pressure underwater.
How many different certifications do you have?
Oh, gosh. That's a great question. They're not all based on depth, right? So I'm a dive instructor. So that's a certification. I'm a ice diver.
That's cool.
It's very cool.
And cold.
All right, I've already learned. I've spoken to divers like twice, and their love of diving puns is unlimited.
Yeah,
there's no. It's as deep as it can go. That was a bad one. I'll keep thinking. All right. Yeah, that was more of a shipwreck than a dive pun. Okay. Anyway, so you got that.
Right. So I've got lots of different ones. For my job, I'm a NOAA scientific diver. So that's a kind of a branch off from, your recreational type of diving. So that's where
How do you get that certification?
Well, we actually just recently did a cool webinar with the NOAA Dive Center, and that is based out in Seattle, Washington. And they have a full, amazing campus there where NOAA scientists go and learn how to, if they don't already know how to scuba dive, they learn how to scuba dive. If they already know, then they just ramp up their training and learn how to collect data underwater, how to be safe while doing science underwater. Because when you first start out as a diver, you're focused, as you should be, on the act of diving and making sure you're doing all those things right and your gear's configured right. So when you add another level of, let's say we're going to document a shipwreck, or we're going to collect invasive mussels, or we're going to, measure fish biohabitat. There we get into betraying my lack of biological knowledge there. Archaeologists call it bioclutter. You're going to go measure some bioclutter underwater. You're adding tasks that you don't want to. You need the training so you can do that comfortably and safely.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Megan Gunn has just started with us, and she's already plotting her next job.
Good.
Just adding it on.
Right. So Megan, you're a diver as well, Megan, right?
I am. I've been diving. I got certified I did my open water dives in 2010.
Oh, great.
And I started my certification process in 2009, back when Purdue had a scuba club. That was the last year that they were actually active. But their goal was to get students certified and then also get them doing a lot of dives. And at that point in my life, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I was like, I'm going to need to do this for my career. So why not get certified now when it's a little bit cheaper, because we're students, and it was definitely worth it.
So where have you dove?
A lot in the Wabash River.
Okay.
I've done a lot of scientific diving, I guess, in the sense of science, for science. I've been diving down in Florida. I teach a marine biology practicum course, so a hands-on marine science course. And every trip we go on down there, I go on some dives. I went on a fossil dive a few years ago. And that was a lot of fun.
So when you go on these trips, do you have to bring your own scuba stuff, or is it a rental kind of thing?
I bring my own wetsuit, mask, snorkel, because germs.
Yeah.
So I bring
in these challenging times.
my personal items, but they're like I'll usually rent a scuba tank because it's a little weighty to be carrying around.
So that's interesting. But Megan, you have left out your coolest and most important dive that you have done, and that is you have rescued one of Illinois Indiana Sea Grant's famous yellow buoys.
Oh. Yes, we went on a Save the Buoy expedition a few years ago, and I was looking up the dates because I thought it was like maybe a couple of years ago. It was in 2016.
It goes quick,
and it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. But I can tell you the story if you want to know the story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Insane. Okay, so I've been working with Jay Begley, who is he's the buoy guy. So he retrieves the buoy, he deploys the buoys to work on maintenance. I've been working with him since 2009. So he's like my work bestie, and he knows that I get really seasick when I'm on the waves, and so he never asked me to do anything on Lake Michigan. And when he asked me to go out with him this trip, I knew that like I was his last resort. So I was like, okay, I'll go. It's fine. And so we got everything together and we're headed up there. Took my Dramamine that morning, and it was a couple-hour drive. And we got out to where we were going to go, and there were two other divers on the boat. And I was going to be the last one to go in. So I'm waiting for them to go down. And I really don't know what was happening. I was just trying to keep myself level. And I was like, listen, Jay, don't worry, but I'm about to puke. And so I went over to the side of the boat. I hurled and was like, okay, suit me up. And he was like, I think you should probably sit this out. I was like, no, this is your third trip up here. You don't want to have to make another 4 or 5 hour trip just to get up here. I'm going to go down. And it turns out there's signs everywhere that says, don't fish around here. Don't play around the buoy. And somebody used some kind of fishing line. It was made out of metal, and it was just wrapped around the bottom of the buoy. And so when they went to unhook it, they couldn't unhook it. So I went down there. It was three of us still, but there were some issues with the other divers. So I was just kind of unhooking and cutting through all this line to free the buoy, and we got it out.
So we have some video. I think we included it as a link once. I'll put it again in the show notes for this episode, which you can find at teachmeaboutthegreatlakes.com/1414. But so you're down there, and that's post having hurled, I guess,
yes.
as you put it.
And it was so clear. I've never been on a dive that was like, it was so clear, but there was nothing. I didn't see any fish. You couldn't see any debris. It was just, it felt like I could see for miles, which probably wasn't that far back in reality, but it was so cool. It was so cool. And it was cold. And so I had on like 10 millimeters worth of wetsuit. I had on a hood.
I'm in a
usually when we're diving in the Wabash, it's not that cold. So I just go in with my swimsuit and a t-shirt or something. But it was cold.
Is that just a deal? Like the cold, is it ever warm diving in the Great Lakes, or is it just because I'm from the South, and so I think of like these tropical, Gulf of Mexico or Caribbean locations, or semi-tropical. Anyway, the point is, I think of warm. And, is that not the case? Is there no warm diving in the Great Lakes?
I will say it's relative, really. We like to say
that means cold. Okay.
No. We like to say there's no such thing as cold water, only inappropriate exposure protection, right? But I was in Lake Huron I was snorkeling around, so only went about 15 feet deep, and it was 63 degrees. It was pretty warm. So that's not so bad. But, when you go a little bit deeper, it doesn't take long. I dove down to that 15-foot level, and as soon as you feel the thermocline, right, where the water changes temperature, and it can hit you like a brick wall. So it gets pretty cold pretty fast, but the water can be pretty warm.
I don't believe you. Okay. You're exactly right. It's all relative. I was thinking about that. Okay. Well, we're glad now that Megan is hopefully fought through Megan Goss. We have too many Megan G's on the show. Now that Megan Goss has come on, Megan, hello. Tell us a little bit about where you work and when you got started diving.
Yes. Hello, Stuart, and hello, the other Megan. So I also work for the Sea Grant program, but I work for the Michigan Sea Grant program. So I serve as a Sea Grant extension educator out of the Saginaw Bay region of Michigan, which is the largest watershed in Michigan, if you didn't know that. There's over 7,000 miles of rivers and streams in the Saginaw Bay watershed. But I serve in the Saginaw Bay region, helping connect communities to resources to enhance their sustainable development and connection with the Great Lakes. And I do a lot of work around community resilience, place-based education, and also do some sustainable fisheries work. So doing what I can to help Saginaw Bay. And I got into diving through Stephanie when I used to work for the Northeast Michigan Great Lakes Stewardship Initiative and was housed out of Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary in Alpena, Michigan back in 2015.
Excellent. So you've been diving for about 5 years now then. So are you certified? So I'm learning about all these certifications, and Stephanie was listing hers, and then I think I cut her off to make a stupid joke, so I apologize for that. So do you have like numerous dive certifications as well, or is it just like are you a single cert kind of woman?
I have a couple certifications, but I am very much on, I'm a baby diver, as we say. So I have the PADI PADI certification for recreational diving up to 60 feet. And then I have additional night diving certification, which is through PADI as well.
Huh. Have you been night diving in the Great Lakes?
I have. And that was what we did as that was part of our training for the Big 5 dive. So I think 3 of our 5 dives.
Is she frozen?
Yep, she's leaving us in suspense. That's okay.
That is suspenseful.
Yes, 3 of our 5 somethings. I assume 5 dives. So she's actually going to start talking about it. I think she wants to talk about this idea of the Big 5 dive.
Yeah.
So I had not heard about this until we were talking to Megan Goss a few months ago about something. And I think if you do a Big 5 dive, you just kind of tend to bring it up in conversation. It's like being a vegan or into CrossFit or whatever. You just sort of mention it. And so...
I think you're right. That's a hilarious comparison. I love it.
So Stephanie, tell me about the Big 5 dive.
Yeah. So the Big 5 dive was a concept to scuba dive all 5 Great Lakes in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So as you guys know, that's a vast, vast area to cover. Doesn't matter what you're doing. And we've known people, colleagues that the person who certified me as a dive instructor has been doing it with his dive club every other year since the early 90s. And people do these challenges. People like these themed challenges, right? So we know folks that have sailed all 5 of the Great Lakes, who have snorkeled, who have drove, of course. And so it was just another way to connect communities to what we were doing. And really, like Megan Goss was talking about, her main job is, and your main job in Sea Grant offices is to connect people to the resources. And we thought that would be a pretty compelling way.
That's fascinating. And so I'm really, the logistics of this kind of blow my mind. How long do you have? So for it to count as a Big 5 dive, there's got to be some minimum standard for like wetness, right? Like, so you can't dip a toe. Like, right. Is there some depth you have to get, or is it once you're submerged, if you take one puff from your scuba unit, then it counts?
So we came up with it. It's up to the individual group doing it. There's no Big 5 dive
official,
right? That's making sure you check off the list. So we just designed our own protocols, and what we decided. And people do different things. Some folks like to do it under cover of night. Some folks like to do it with lots of publicity and involve the communities. So our rules were you had to the dive itself had to be 10 minutes, and that was pretty much it. We really didn't have much, and some people ended up snorkeling part of it, which is fine. I mean, snorkeling isn't scuba diving, but it is a type of diving into the water, and we had a big group of people, so that, it really ran the gamut. We were pretty flexible. We did limit it to shore dives because of just it takes time to get in a boat and trailer a boat and all that. So to keep it even more simple, we just did shore dives. That's what's cool about diving in the Great Lakes is there's, like I said before, so many shipwrecks that are that accessible that you can just hop in and snorkel.
And so you do a shore dive or a 10-minute dive, and then you drive on to the next Great Lake. So how many of the 24 hours, what's the quickest you can do a reasonable Big Five dive in, do you think?
Well, we had some other colleagues at the sanctuary that did it way quicker than we did. They did it in, I think, 16 and a half hours. We did it in 22 and a half hours. Wow. So we were cutting it kind of close. That's why Megan, when she left us, she was going to say 3 of our 5 dives were at night when only 2 of them were supposed to be. But since the very last one ended up being a night dive
you hit night from both ends, didn't you?
We did. We started at midnight and ended at 10:30 at night. We were on the shores in Lake Superior when the clock struck midnight. Jumped in.
That's so cool.
That is. This just occurred to me. Is there like a slogan are y'all looking for a slogan?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Always.
The Big Five dive, it's a BFD. I think that's
that's brilliant.
I like that.
Anyway, so all right, so you're ready to dive in, and is there a place to log this? I want to go to a website and see all the people who have done this. Is there one, or is
that would be so cool?
That would be cool. We should have started one. A lot of people are kind of protective of their sites. We are the opposite, and we have a good friend who's a documentarian, a filmmaker, award-winning filmmaker, and she made a movie about our adventure. Cool. So it's nice to have those kinds of friends, right? And in fact, her film, The Big Five Dive, traveled to 19 different film festivals around the U.S., won some awards.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a short film. It's only 28 minutes long. We can definitely send you the link to that because it's now that it's done the Film Fest circuit, it's available for everybody to watch online. But others, we had a hard time researching different sites to go to. I mean, we knew the ones in our area, but that's only Lake Huron. So that's 1 out of 5. So we had to.
Because you don't want to just get it. You don't want to just do it. You want to do it right? You want to see something cool in each leg. Yeah.
Well, that was another goal. We definitely wanted to visit a historic site.
Okay.
And so dive a shipwreck.
Right.
So that made it definitely the logistics more complicated because even though there are thousands and thousands of shipwrecks, you're not just going to stroll in and happen by one. You do have to know where they are. So that involved talking to the communities a lot. And our final. Mm-hmm.
Your goal was to dive a shipwreck that was close to the shore so that you could shore dive. How many of those are there? At least 5, right?
At least 5, except for our last one in Lake Ontario, which, because each of the lakes are different, of course. And our last one was an historic hotel dock. So we couldn't easily, if we kept going, we probably could have found something in Lake Ontario, but we couldn't easily find a shallow shipwreck site that was on the American side because we didn't want to be held up in customs or anything, even though Canadian diving is beautiful. So we ended up doing the historic hotel dock, which is awesome off the shores of Lake Ontario there. But the rest were definitely shipwrecks. And you asked how many. And I will say, I know Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary best, and we have probably a dozen shipwrecks that I could point you to right now. If you're up in Alpena, that you could go and spend the afternoon exploring, an 1877 wooden schooner or a 1905 big wooden freighter, which only about 15 feet deep off the shores of.
Wow!
It's one of my favorite shallow dive sites, and it's actually featured in the Big Five dive. That was our stop because it's such a pretty landscape there. There's the big, beautiful lighthouse. There's a freighter wheelhouse on the beach. Big sandy beach, less beach now, of course. But then the shipwreck just out there, and the Marine Sanctuary maintains a mooring buoy on the shipwreck, so it's easy to find. So you swim out, you paddle out, tie your kayak up, tie up your stand-up paddleboard, and explore the shipwreck.
That is, and if you could, are these things where they're websites we can explore for shallow dive? Oh yeah, we'll definitely put some links to those in the show notes because you've got me interested in this, and I'm concerned about the cold, but this still sounds pretty cool.
Well, if you're concerned about the cold, we could keep you warm. There's the Friends of the National Marine Sanctuary operate a glass bottom boat. And you could go out and see the shallow shipwrecks that way, and you don't even have to get wet. Worry about being cold.
I can just drop my kids off the side and they can go. They don't care. Like
we
have this pool out back. We have one of these like kiddie pools. And we have an above ground pool, which I never thought I'd have because it's. I'm from the city, but we have an above ground pool because that's what our income supports. But they come in and they have like blue lips, but they don't care. So I am totally in for this basically. Let's see. And Megan Goss is back, which is great. And we apologize for technical difficulties she's been having. We're just going to have you back on, Megan. That's the only solution here is that we'll have to be on twice, maybe 3 times.
Hopefully by the 3rd time, the internet will work.
So, all right. You've convinced me. I'm all excited. Big 5 dive. Megan Goss, you did a Big 5 dive too. Is that right?
Yes, I did. I participated in the Big 5 dive.
Okay. And have you done one? Is this the thing where you try to do one every year? More than one?
No. I did one, and I think that's enough.
Okay.
Yes. But it was a lot of fun. And I definitely am open to a lot more diving adventures.
Okay.
I guess for me, the Big 5 dive experience really was telling for how much I need sleep and how if I don't have sleep, I am not a nice person to be around.
Okay, good to know. Since we run in the same professional circles, so if I want to get started diving, I'm going to do the glass bottom boat. Love it. Did that in Silver Springs, Florida. They have a glass bottom boat there where you can see like they have this really beautiful clear springs, and they filmed a James Bond movie there, so that's cool. All right, and then I'm going to do some snorkeling, and I'll keep myself warm by the glass bottom boat, and maybe when you pee in your wetsuit, does that make it warmer or not?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll drink a lot before then. And, but then I want to get into the actual scuba diving. What do I even need to do? Where do I go? How long does it take? Like I'm fired up. I want to do it this summer. Is that even on the table or no?
It is. And since Megan has not been with us very long, I'll let her talk about her experience, but it absolutely is. We could get you certified in a week, Stuart, if you're ready. Megan, you want to share all your experience doing it?
Yeah, so I, like I shared earlier, I got certified up near Alpena. So I started diving on some inland lakes, which are definitely really cool and worth exploring. And we'll have to talk about inland lakes later and night diving with mud puppies. But I started diving in those inland lakes first, and that was really helpful before going out into the open water. And I guess a couple things I would say. So my first diving experience was also my first snorkeling experience. So I was very overwhelmed. So I would try to like go snorkeling first if you can, and then try diving, just so you're a little bit more adjusted. But I'm originally from Southern Illinois. So when I moved up to Alpena, I was just blown away by the Great Lakes, and I really wanted to explore, but was definitely taking the deep dive as opposed to just slowly going into the water. But what's nice when you get certified with a local agency, you can spread out your dive certification and your practices over the span of a longer period of time. If you're getting certified while on a vacation at like a resort, for instance, you're really confined to a shorter period of time. So for my certification, it was over a month of classes, along with like dive experiences of going out both in the inland lakes and then also out into the open water in Lake Huron. And we also had some training materials through PADI and a certification test that you needed to take as well in order to be certified and make sure that you understand how you can keep yourself safe as a diver and how you can help keep others safe, because when you're diving, you should always have a dive buddy with you. So, Stuart, I guess that's another thing. You need to find your dive buddy.
It's really unlikely that anybody wants to be my buddy.
I'll go with you, Stuart.
I set that one up. So people keep talking about this Patty woman. Who is she? Haha. No, what is Patty? We've heard it mentioned a couple of times. Is this like a diving organization or?
Yes, it is. It's the Professional Association for Dive Instruction. Is that right?
Yeah. Dive instructors. Yeah.
Instructors.
Close enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And they have... Go ahead.
It's one of many dive certification groups. So there's also NAUI. Stephanie, you probably know more about these dive certification organizations than I do, considering you do this professionally. So maybe you should share.
Yeah. So PADI is the world's largest certifying agency for scuba diving. It's which is pretty cool because they've been doing it for decades and decades, and they really have the educational part of it down. If you're PADI certified, you can go anywhere in the world, show your certification card, known as a C card, and it's recognized, and PADI's pretty incredible that way. They have some great resources. And just circling back to the Big Five dive, that was part, we didn't talk about the why behind the Big Five dive, which was to celebrate PADI Women's Dive Day, which is an annual event to recognize women in diving, the women that are diving now, that are doing it professionally, that are doing it recreationally, but also to inspire women to get into diving as for fun or for a career and head to the NOAA Dive Center like Megan Gunn is considering now.
Yeah.
Because only 34% of divers are women currently.
And so Women's Dive Day is coming up. Is that right?
Yes, it is. It's going to be here on the 18th of July. So it's usually on a Saturday of every month. Or not every month, but every July.
So those of you who are, let me redo that. Well, we won't actually redo it, but also that just happened 2 days ago, didn't it? This episode will come out on the 20th of July, I believe.
Oh, yeah. We had so much fun.
Have either of you been on a dive on Women's Dive Day?
So that was the Big Five dive.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we did, just a couple days ago, we had a big group of people scuba diving and snorkeling at the Joseph S. Fay, which is one of Megan Goss's favorite sites.
Yeah, so that's another site you can explore from Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, and it is accessible by the shore. And then it also has, along the shoreline there, depending on the water levels that year, you may be able to see remnants of the Fay, the Joseph S. Fay along the shoreline. And then there's also a lighthouse as well at the site. So it really can connect in on so many people. And that is a site that you can also snorkel on over the top. So, and depending on clarity, you can see down pretty well at the bottom because it's not very deep. Is it, Stephanie?
No, it's about 17 feet deep, 15 to 17, but it's massive. It's a huge wreck for being so shallow. It's like over 200 feet long wooden wreck, sank in a storm in 1905.
Oh, wow.
So I know I said that this is where my next vacation was going to be, but is there any special permits that we need to have to go and sample, or is it just open to the public to go diving?
In the Marine Sanctuary, as in the state of Michigan waters, it is historic sites are open to visitors. Of course, there's state of Michigan laws that prohibit disrupting, disturbing, removing anything from a historic site.
That's
but you're welcome to visit them. In fact, we maintain mooring buoys on over 40 of the shipwreck sites. And that just, lots of reasons to do that. It makes it easier to find because you see that mooring buoy floating on the water. You don't have to worry about too much about the coordinates to locate it. And it also protects the shipwreck site because you tie your dive boat up to the mooring buoy, you tie your kayak up, and then you don't have to drop anchor and potentially damage the shipwreck site.
Oh, it didn't even occur to me. Of course, there's a lot of that consideration because these are beautiful historical artifacts, right? But a lot of times there's probably just a whole cavalcade of laws and best practices and things like that you have to be thoughtful about. What about, speaking of it, we're actually recording this on Canada Day, I am told, by highly placed sources within Illinois Indiana Sea Grant. And so, is there considerations for, when you get over into Canadian waters or something? Like, can you launch from the U.S. and then swim over to Canada to dive? Or is it, I don't even know how that works in the Great Lakes.
Well, you'd have to be one heck of a swimmer, I guess. So you can so there are different regulations for diving historic sites in Canada.
Okay.
And it depends on the site, of course, because a lot of these sites are grave sites.
Right, of course.
And accessibility is different across states. Accessibility and restrictions to historic sites are different across states, across countries, across waters all around the world. So it's always best to check in with local authorities. But there is an amazing national park across Lake Huron from Thunder Bay. We've got like a sister sanctuary, Fathom 5 National Park, where they have very similar recreational opportunities for shipwreck explorers.
Yeah, because these are treasures, right? These are, at this point, ecological, but also historical and cultural treasures that are worth protecting. over time and worth treating with care, but also it sounds like worth seeing.
The water also acts kind of like a freshwater museum. I don't know if Stephanie shared that earlier.
What do you mean by that?
So the freshwater helps to preserve these shipwrecks. So they, with the exception of what we're seeing with the zebra and quagga mussels and their impacts on the shipwrecks. But overall, the fresh water is really, it's helping to preserve these shipwrecks. So it kind of serves as like underwater museums. So it's really important to leave any artifacts at the sites because of that reason, because they're going to be better preserved in the lake than they would be on land.
That's awesome.
Interesting. Well, this is fascinating. I'm really actually excited. I'm not going to get dive certified this summer. I'll be honest. I've got 3 kids. But I think the idea of taking some sort of a boat tour or something like that, or finding a way, and this actually, we talked about this offline, but this is a fairly safe hobby, I think, during a pandemic time, right? And that you can be relatively distant with each other and the virus isn't going to shoot through the lake at your dive buddy or whatever. So it seems like a hobby for our times. Mm-hmm. But that's actually not why we invited you here on Teach Me About the Great Lakes. The reason we invited you here is to ask you the following 2 questions, which I think are more interesting and important than diving. First is this. If you could choose to have a great donut for breakfast or a great sandwich for lunch, which would you choose?
Sandwich. And it would be a muffaletta for sure.
Wow.
I really want to make one right now.
Wait a minute. Now you're getting into my neck of the woods. Where do you have a good muffaletta?
I don't have any good ones near me, but every time I go down to New Orleans, that's the first thing I get is a muffaletta
Central
sandwich.
Grocery. Oh, very good. Well, this is already the greatest episode of this podcast in its brief history. Stephanie.
What is a muffaletta?
Oh, that's a New Orleans style sandwich. It's really salty and it's a classic. I don't even know all the ingredients because I've never made one.
Meat and olives and meat and olives and cheese.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like an Italian sandwich with like capers and green olives and, just everything on there. And it depends on where you get it. But it's got salami and, all that. Yeah. It's an Italian sandwich, New Orleans style, essentially. Yeah. So Megan Goss is obviously just kissing up to try to get another appearance, and that's fine. It's not even that hard to get appearances, but you're welcome to one. So Stephanie, I'm sorry, you had a second best answer to this question.
Yes, second best answer. Well, first I will say, even though I'm from Montana, I make a really mean muffaletta sandwich.
Look at this.
Yep, it's true. I've never made you one, Megan, but I'll have to because we would have parties on Mardi Gras, and years ago, and make good muffaletta sandwiches. So those are tasty, and I agree. I would have the same answer. I definitely would prefer a savory, tasty sandwich instead of a donut. But I can't choose this. Oh, I wonder how about a croque monsieur? I think that's what I would choose.
There we go.
Not a croque madame.
No, croque monsieur, because that has the egg, right?
Croque monsieur has croque madame, I believe, has the egg.
I think croque monsieur.
And can I say my favorite joke, Stuart?
You can, but I love the accents as you're debating these various sandwiches. I can tell you all they're up close to Canada.
Why do the French only eat one egg?
Why do the French only eat one egg?
I won't answer. Sorry, Megan.
Because it's enough.
Okay.
Enough?
Yeah, no, I got you. I
took
took 15 years of French. Yeah.
So since she told the joke, can I tell a shipwreck joke then?
You can.
Stuart's like, why do I have these people
What has happened?
on my show?
Oh, technical difficulties again. What are the odds? No, let's hear your shipwreck joke.
Okay, what lies at the bottom of the lake and shakes?
I don't know.
A nervous wreck.
A nervous wreck. I'm hesitant to go on to this next question because I'm starting to wonder the merit of it. But the next thing we like to do is we like to leave our listeners with a little bit of life advice, something they can take home. It could be serious, it could be silly, it could be big, it could be little. Somebody quoted RuPaul. Somebody, gave the same advice they give to their graduate students. It can, whatever. What is one little bit of life advice that you have for our listeners? Other than don't eat healthy sandwiches seems to be your...
That's good advice.
Life's too short for healthy sandwiches.
I guess one life advice I have is that little acts add up over time. So when I think about Great Lakes stewardship and Great Lakes literacy, there's a lot of ways that we can help to protect the Great Lakes, and little acts do add up. So thinking about refusing to single use when you can, avoiding single-use plastics like straws, plastic bags, single-use plastic water bottles. Each one can add up, and by refusing to single use, you can really help to better protect the Great Lakes.
I like that.
That's really good, Megan. How am I supposed to follow that up?
You followed the last one pretty well.
I should have.
Fortune favors the bold. Yeah.
I'll connect to that, and I would say take the plunge. And whether it's in deciding to get certified, if you're thinking about it, don't consider it too long. If you're interested in doing it, just take the plunge, dive right in. If you're worried about the Great Lakes and protecting the Great Lakes, take the plunge and do something today, even those little acts that Megan Goss is talking about, and it definitely will make a difference.
That is actually really, really wonderful advice. Well, thank you so much to Stephanie Gondula and Megan Goss for teaching us so much about the Great Lakes. Before we go, do you have like a social media or a website or something like that where people may want to follow you or something along those lines?
I would say definitely check out thunderbay.noaa, so that's NOAA.gov, and that's where you can see a really cool interactive shipwreck map. Talking to Megan and Stuart, you guys can go see the shipwrecks that you want to visit, and that's where you can learn how to come visit me in Alpena and learn more about the rich history of the Great Lakes.
Mm-hmm. And I would recommend visiting MichiganSeaGrant.org. We're also active on social media, thinking of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but we have a Upwellings email list, so you can sign up for our newsletter where we share updates about different programs that we are offering.
Wonderful. And we'll put links to all of those in the show notes. Megan and Stephanie, thank you so much for teaching us all about the Great Lakes.
Thank you.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion, Megan. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience with us diving, and we're really glad to have you on board.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I'm really excited to see all the things that are going to happen in the coming years.
Yeah, no, this is cool. And I hope listeners, if you go out there, go look into getting diving. It does seem like there are low-cost ways, low-input ways, like just with snorkeling or glass-bottom boats. I had no idea about these shipwrecks, so this is on my list now of things to have podcasts. I mean, of course, right? There's so much shipping. Why wouldn't there be a shipwreck? But it just, this is the point of the podcast, is to teach me things that are obvious to everybody else. And so I'm glad to have it.
I was on the note of shipwrecks. I was listening to a podcast the other day called Natural Disasters, where they were talking about the Great Storm in 1913 that hit all of the Great Lakes. And if you're interested in learning about some shipwrecks that happened in the Great Lakes, that is a good one. It was a 2-part episode, but.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes too. No, I don't know about the Great Storm of 1913. Well, so great about it. Ha ha ha. Okay. Well, so let's do our normal spiel. Megan, what did you learn about the Great Lakes today?
I learned that there are a lot of shipwrecks in the Great Lakes. She said between 6,000 and 10,000. I had no idea, but like you just said, it makes sense because it's a major shipping waterway.
Yeah, right, of course. And so, I mean, there's a lot out there to explore. I had never really thought of it, to tell you the truth. I learned a lot about the Big Five dive. It's a BFD. And I thought that was interesting about the fresh water serving as like a preservative for these really important historical artifacts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Where you should leave things where you find them, like Boy Scout.
Yes, no, that is definitely true. Take only photographs, leave only footprints, but you can't leave footprints because you're in the water and you're wearing flippers anyway. So leave only the warming glow of the urine that you kept to keep yourself. And that is gross. On that note, Megan, is there somewhere that people can go to follow you on social media or whatever?
Yes, if you're on Twitter, follow me at _TFFP. And then if you're on Instagram, it is at the Familiar Faces Project. Okay,
now hold on. We'll go briefly into this and we'll do more detail later. Tell me, what is TFFP, the Familiar Faces Project?
So the Familiar Faces Project is a program designed to show students of color that there are people that look like them that are professionals in natural resources, so that they have role models that they can aspire to be, essentially.
Excellent. And this is really important work that you're doing. And we are thrilled to see where that goes and to see what we can do to help with that. And so I encourage everybody to go check that out because it's really important. It's as important as anything we do, frankly, at Sea Grant in many, many ways. Great. And I encourage you to follow our official program stuff at ILIN Sea Grant for Illinois, Indiana Sea Grant. And you can follow the show on Twitter at, Teach Great Lakes. If you have any questions for us, you can use the hashtag AskGreatLakes. And with that, thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, tune in next time, and we will see you. If I can find the outro, there it is. In the meantime, keep grading those lakes. Awesome. Thank you, Megan. That was great. A little long.